I chose cannabis because it grew up out the ground. I always seen it help people. I never seen it hurt anybody. I'm from the east side of Los Angeles. Growing up on the east side in the 80s, it's the crack epidemic. So you're growing up around a lot of drugs and a lot of gang banging. And my dad was a hustler, so I got my dad in the street and I got my mom in the street. My granny, she worked for Harrison Ford. Once I got to meet Steven Spielberg and Melissa Ford during the E.T. time. So you get to see the transition. You get to see, okay, I'm from the east side, we got rats and roaches. Then you go over here to Mulholland and get to see these big old mansions. So it gives you kind of something to chase when you grow older. You kind of like, damn, let me figure out how to get over here. So it kind of puts the fire up under you. I would never sell crack a day in my life because for one, it broke my family up. And for two, it just tore down my whole community.
We saw, particularly in the beginning of the 80s and really through the 90s, this notion of violent youth predators that became the scare tactic for the public. So it began to create this sense that crime was run amok. But what happened on the street were low-level drug prosecutions. Kids walking down the street, somebody's smoking a joint, charged with low-level possessions. Those became the targeted ways that police implemented the war on drugs and really racially target particular communities for low-level drug prosecutions. Then comes in the beginning of what became the three-strike laws, where one cannabis possession or small charge, if it was your third strike, could land you in prison for the rest of your life. And those are disproportionately targeted at Black and brown communities across the United States. Every year we see roughly 650,000 cannabis arrests and convictions. But that doesn't begin to tell the fact that there's an order of magnitude where the police may engage in 4 to 5 times as many stops of people just walking down the street and accused of cannabis. Rarely do we think about the collateral consequences of just being harassed by the police day in, day out. What it does to your sense of human dignity, to self-worth, to a sense of your own value. And that gets chipped away each and every day by how cannabis is policed in communities of color.
There's a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding around just how that one simple sort of police encounter can fundamentally alter one's life.
So I get introduced to the weed. I start with 1/8. I stay out all day. I flip that to 1 ounce. Then I flip it to 2 ounces and so forth, and I get to 1 pound. Then I learn a game on how to mail the marijuana out of town. I'm trying to just make some money, so I start selling marijuana in 2003. January 28th, man, I'll never forget that day. I'm pulling out the driveway, and I see a Monte Carlo, a Durango, and all kind of cars hop out the car and say, "Get down on the ground. We're going to expedite you to Charlotte. You have an indictment for marijuana." It's from 2002, a conspiracy for distributing marijuana from Los Angeles to Charlotte.
So I went to trial. Tuesday, trial started. And by Friday, me and my co-defendants, Natalia Wade and Corvain Cooper, were found guilty by a jury not of our peers. So they've sent out a probation agent to assess me. I am a first-time offender, nonviolent offender, cannabis offender, college graduates, building my career. I have a family and a home. And this lady interviews me and reports to the court that I received 24 years in prison.
So now we have 2.3 million people in this country in jails and prisons or juvenile facilities. And that's an untenable solution. The United States locks up more people than any other country. It continues to show that the criminal legal system is rife with inequities and disparities. We know that criminal conduct, as relates to drugs, is actually oftentimes higher in white communities than it is in Black and brown communities.
When we look at the arrests every year for cannabis prosecution, that has collateral consequences in terms of people's job opportunities, opportunities for housing, opportunities for education, because once you have that cannabis conviction, that carries with you for many times the rest of your life.
I waived my rights to an appeal. I went to court and received 87 months in prison. If I didn't waive my rights to an appeal, I would receive the 24 years, and then I'd have to appeal from the inside for the egregious act of depositing cannabis profits into my account. I have been in the county jail for 2 years, so it's almost a relief. That's over. I get to go to a federal prison camp closer to home in California. I see my daughter for the first time. It had been 2 years now. I'm so excited to see the rest of my family. Now I can see my sister, my stepmom, who truly played a major role. She was the mom that God had chosen for me. And a month into being in California, she's sick, and it's 4 days before she dies. And so when I asked for permission to travel to my stepmother's funeral, I'm told that my stepmother is not considered immediate family. And I don't understand how someone who's raised me and at this time was the caregiver of my child, her and my mom took turns, for them to tell me that she's not immediate family. That's when I knew this prison sentence for cannabis had done damage that will never be repaired.
The zealous prosecution of, low-level petty offenses has been a major driver of growth in jail populations, which in turn feeds into the growth in prison populations. So we do need to counter that. Prosecutorial discretion can only go so far, and we are seeing progressive prosecutors decline to prosecute low-level drug offenses, but that can change just depending on the results of an election. So we really do need to liberalize many laws that relate to drug use or misuse or distribution, and we need to codify that so we are not able to continue this ebb and flow of drug law enforcement that we've seen over the past 50 years.
I'm in the TV room with Stephanie Shepard, who also served 10 years for a nonviolent cannabis offense. It's after hours, the officers have let us in, and we're watching the news, and it says, up next, a look into the cannabis industry. And they are interviewing the ladies of the Beverly Hills Cannabis Club, and they asked one of the founders, how is business? And she says, business is booming. And Stephanie turns around and looks at me, and she goes, business is booming? And I'm like, yep. You've got 10, I've got 7. That's 17 years together for the same activity that this lady on the Channel 7 News is doing. And let's be clear, me and this lady on the screen did not look the same.
The only way I can get home of life without parole is through a clemency, or the law needs to change. It's really going to be a long shot. So it's 6 a.m. in the morning, and people are still yelling because everybody was waiting. It's kind of like I'm like the poster child in the jail for, like, everybody wants me to go home. I'm a good guy. So they're like, man, they do the paperwork kind of slow, man. Your name should still be on there. Don't trip. So I get back to the cell. I'm not in a cell for no longer than maybe 5-10 minutes. My counselor comes to my cell and says, man, you got 5 minutes to pack it up. You just got clemency. And right now, even though I'm out and even though I got clemency and I'm free, the bondage is not over.